Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Martin. I'm an independent living advocate for Native or for Superior Alliance for Independent Living through the Independent Living for Native Americans program. I'm here with Danny, and feel free to introduce yourself, Danny.
Yeah, Wabajiji, Maingan, Indigenous Cause, Migazi Indodim, Ishmin Indojaba in Anishinaabe, Weekwadang, Ogichada, and I'm also known as Danny Garceau. I'm a retired Sergeant Major, did 30 years active duty with the Army and Army National Guard. I've been serving with I serve with many organizations. I'm involved with many different veteran organizations. I'm the commander of the AMVETS Post here 122. I'm a member of the Weekwadong Ogichida Society with the Keweenaw Indian community. I'm also, of course, with Disabled Vets and American Legion and a few others. But I also serve as the director for the Warrior Society for the Society of American Indian Government Employees, a national organization for American Indian and Alaska Natives. So that's who I am. But I do a lot of volunteer work. I do a lot of things in our Anishinaabe community. But I'm basically retired. I don't work for a paycheck anymore.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to you. Thanks for doing this again. So the first question I really wanted to ask you, and we can dive a lot deeper into this, is I know that you're a flute player. You're a great flute player. You're showing me your collection a couple of days ago. You have quite the collection of Anishinaabe flutes. So can you talk a little bit about what it's like playing the flutes and what you know about the flutes?
Well, flute music, I think everybody's kind of attracted to it, sometime in their life. You don't hear it very much unless you're listening to the right things or you go out and search it. And flute is one of those three musical instruments, the oldest instruments, to humans and also to us Anishinaabe, with the first being the rattle, the second being the drum, and then the flute being the third. And those are the things that are associated, with American Indian culture, Anishinaabe culture. And it was probably 20 years ago, there was a store in a mall that sold American Indian type things. Some of them were authentic, some of them weren't so authentic, but they were going out of business and they had a sale. And I seen this cedar flute up on the wall, and it was authentic and everything. And I never played one before, but I picked it up and didn't know what I was going to do with it. But I picked it up and I hung on to it. And then about maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I was invited by Northern Michigan University's Native American student program to come and listen to Keith Sokola, both during his concert and then also speaking with the students the next day. And when he was speaking to the students, he mostly talked about the flute, and he had a flute there and he played it a little bit. But he talked about how a great instrument it was, how easy it was to play. And I'm not musical at all. And when somebody says something's easy to play, I kind of take it with a grain of salt. It might be easy for most people to play, but maybe not me. But I was listening to him talk, and he said it was easy to play. And he gave a few tips about playing, about covering the holes and always keeping the holes covered closest to your mouth as you're going up and down the scale. Those are basics that you can break those rules once you play more. But to begin with, those are rules to make the sounds that you're blowing through there, sound the best. But he also talked about how the flute is such a great instrument for healing for your soul. He says you can't feel anger when you're playing the flute. You can't make an angry sound out of the flute. And I think you can, but in general you can't. And when you're playing it, it's something that is very therapeutic. And he said we'd have a much better world if everybody played the flute, because there'd be less anger, less hate in the world if people were playing the flute. So when I heard that, I went home that day after listening to that class, and I picked that flute up for the very first time and used those little guidance, that little bit of guidance that he gave, and I blew in there and I was making sound, and the sound didn't sound bad. It actually sounded pretty good. And so I started to play and started to play and learn on my own. I never, of course, took any lessons. recently, I mean, over the years, like I said, that was about 10, 12 years ago. I've had the opportunity to play with a lot of different people. I learned from them. And I've also done different things. The newest thing for me is over the past year, I've been playing with Wawiea, the indigenous rock group up in Marquette, and playing with different instruments has just been a real experience, learning more about what the flute can do, what it shouldn't do, and how it works with different instruments. And I'm growing all the time. That's the thing with the flute. Some people play the flute and they feel like they get in a rut, but there's certain tips to try to get out of that rut. And there's so many things that can be done with it. There's so many different types of flute. And I was thinking about this today. It's something I haven't done, and maybe somebody else has done it, but I haven't Googled it or anything like that. But I was thinking, for our veterans, those people that are suffering from PTSD and nightmares and things of that from serving, the flute therapy, having them start to play the flute might be a thing to do. I think of Dan King over in Oneida. He used to have nightmares. He was in Vietnam, and he started writing poetry and writing stories, and that's how he got out of his PTSD. And I'm thinking, maybe flute playing might be a way to help our veterans.
Something therapeutic about playing music or being creative to help you get out of your inner turmoil, huh?
Right. And I mean, I don't play the flute to entertain people. I mean, people ask me to play and I will play for them. But I play flute for myself. I mean, really, I do. My most enjoyable time playing flute is being out in my kayak on a lake and playing when there's loons around or even other birds around. I can remember one time floating out the Red Raspberry River up in Red Cliff and out into the bay, and I found these big sand cliffs, and I paddled over there and pulled out a flute, and as I started to play, all these birds came out from the cliff walls and from the trees along the cliff walls, and they were all chirping back at me as I was playing, and it was just so magical. It was just one of those things that I don't know if it could ever repeat again, but in that moment, everything was just right.
So I'm going to go back to when you said when you first bought the flute. It took a couple of years for you to play it again. You didn't get that urge as soon as you bought the flute to take it home and play it?
I didn't, because I hadn't listened to a lot of flute music before that. And plus, when I was young, I was told I didn't have music ability. So I really, in my mind, subconsciously, I believed I had no musical ability. When I was in 8th grade, when I was in 7th or 8th grade, I was in chorus. And the choral teacher told me that she wants me in chorus. I was a nice, young-looking man, young boy, but to please just mouth the words. And I don't know if it's because my voice was changing or I just couldn't carry a tune, whether my voice was changing or not. But ever since then, I never bothered paying attention to the words of songs, memorizing songs, trying to sing songs. I just figured hey, that wasn't something for me, was making music. So that was the reason when I first bought that flute. I didn't buy it to actually play it. I bought it because it was a piece of culture, and it was a piece of culture. That's why I was buying it. And it wasn't until, like I said, after Keith Secola introduced it to me and showed me how it was played, that I actually thought, well, maybe I can play that.
And so I've noticed this with my flute playing, but there's just the flute resonates differently when you play it inside versus playing it out in the forest or out in a lake. And it's hard for me to put it into words, but can you kind of try to describe that feeling of when you play it in the forest versus inside, how different it is?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I play the flute, a lot of it, might have something to do with the way it sounds. You're right. When you get that little bit of echo, whether it's echoing off the lake or echoing off of a row of trees, or if you're playing like in a cave type area, or even out in your garage, an empty garage without any cars in it, you get that echo sound. And that echo sound is really nice. But as far as being motivated while you're playing it, that makes it sound good. When I'm playing it, I don't know if I've ever done this. Maybe I have, where I've closed my eyes and tried to imagine things. But I find it so much easier to play it and actually be looking what's out in front of me. If I'm looking at a lake, or if I'm looking at a glade or some woods, or if I'm looking at a sunset, it's so easy it's so easy to be motivated to make that music come, because I don't play a lot. I don't play sheet music. I don't play a lot of songs that have been written. I mean, I have them, and I'm able to play them, but I don't play them. I normally play what we call free fluting, which is playing what you feel at the time. And I'll go in and I'll play sometimes for at senior centers, tell them some stories and play the flute for them and that. And I'll tell them, hopefully this will sound good, because I'm motivated by what's around me when I play the flute, because I'm free fluting. So if it sounds good to you, thank yourself, because you're the one giving me that inspiration. And it always normally does. I never came across where I came squeaking with the flute or something and said, "Oh, you guys just didn't do it for me today."
So the flute really is an extension of how you're feeling. So if you're feeling in a great, carefree, loving mood, it's just going to show through your playing. But if you're in a frustrated mood, you might as well not even play it, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's days I don't play it, and there's days I don't play it not because of how I feel. I mean, there's days I just don't play it, but when I do, when I normally, it's hard for me sometimes to walk into my room here and see a flute and not pick it up and play it. And then sometimes, and I think I got 15 of them. And sometimes I feel guilty if I don't play them all, so I might just play a little bit on each one. I don't want to leave them up. They're kind of like family members. You don't want to neglect them. So see, and they all sound different. Every flute is going to sound different based on whatever key it's in, what kind of wood it's made out of, the length of it, the size of it. All those things affect the way a flute sounds. I mean, I got different flutes in the same key, but they sound different because they're different sizes or made out of different material. And I think I told you before, I bought my flutes from different people. There's some really good artists, some people that made some great flutes. I love them. But my thing is I want to get into making flute myself. I think that's the next step for me, is making flutes.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't want to make them to sell. I want to make them to make them. I might give some away, but I want to make flutes just to make them.
So kind of walk through that with me. Why you don't want to just make the flutes to sell?
I'm not looking to make money.
Okay.
I mean, money's not important to me. And it's not that money's not important. I have money. I get a pension from the military, and that takes care of my needs and my family needs. I'm not rich. I'm not looking to be rich, but it takes care of my needs, and we're very comfortable. So I mean, and so that's, I think if you're making something to sell, you probably need to make something to sell, and I don't have that need. So I'm not motivated to make flutes to sell them. I'm motivated to make flutes to make them. And to have them sound, make good sound. And to me, it's just that creativity is something that I think is going to motivate me to take that step. I've already harvested a few trees, that some amiques, some beavers had cut down that seemed to be about the right size. They look like they'd be better for my flutes than for their dam. So I took some of those, and I figured they were a gift from amique. So I got some of those in my back garage, and like I said, I think maybe this spring I'm going to go out and try to make some flutes. I've watched some videos online. I'd really like to be with somebody that's done it already and work with them side by side. But if that doesn't happen soon, I'm just gonna go do it myself, like most people do. You Google it on YouTube and see how somebody else is doing it from a video, and give it a try yourself. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I was always taught that if you make something with the intent of selling it, it just doesn't work out as much as if you naturally make it with, love and respect, and it'll come together a lot more clear. Like, I do a lot of beadwork, and I never make beadwork to sell. I feel like it's because if I respect the beads enough to where I'm not looking for a profit when I make it, then it'll just naturally come up a lot more organically and a lot nicer than if I was always thinking about that monetary value as I was making it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Although I do appreciate the people that make all those things and they do it to sell, because there's some great beaters out there, some great flute makers, and I'm glad they're doing it because I definitely buy it from them, and they're things that I can't do or didn't have the time to do, and so I appreciate there are people out there that are actually doing it. What gets me is when somebody makes something, they don't put a price on it, and they say, Well, pay me what you think it's worth, because I know I'm always paying them twice as much as they're going to sell it for.
I've never ran into that, but I'm going to stay away from that trap. So on the topic of music, can you talk a little bit? I know you're part of the drum group of Marquette, the Morning Thunder.
Yep, Morning Thunder, which is a learning drum out of Northern Michigan University, and then I also sing with Teal Lake Drum, which is kind of an extension. A lot of us that sing with Teal Lake Drum also sing with Morning Thunder Drum, and we'll occasionally sing with the Munising Drum too. There's a group of us that sing on different drums depending on what's available and who's asked for the drum. But that was a great experience for me too, because just like the flute, I didn't grow up on the drum. I mean, I didn't grow up on a reservation. I didn't grow up in my culture. So I didn't grow up on the drum. But when I retired and I was done with all my military obligations, I immediately, sought out to get immersed back into my culture and that stuff. And drum was one of them. And Northern Michigan University, it's been they've been such great friends. Like I said, they invited me to be part of their group. They invited me to be part of the drum, and it's a learning drum. And I learned songs, and I can remember saying, "Well, I don't know if I'm getting all these vocalizations." This, don't worry, just keep doing it. Keep doing it. It'll come to you. And sure enough, I mean, if somebody asked me to sing a song, it'd be hard for me to sing a song because I don't pay that much attention to it. But if I'm singing a song, it automatically just comes to me. If everybody else is singing, I know the song, I'm singing it. And I never used to take a lead, but now I'm even starting to take leads on songs, which is a little bit of a step for me, because I mean, I was a leader for a long time in the military, and so now I really enjoyed being on the back and not being a leader, kind of just being on the back and letting other people lead.
Yeah, I'm playing on Morning Thunder every now and again too. We've been hosting in the winter months the drum at sale.
Oh yes, yeah.
Having a
I
home
haven't
for
made
it.
it there.
And so can you talk to me a little bit about leads and what leads are? Because not a lot of people know the ins and outs of the grandfather drums, and you really have to have a voice to be a lead, right?
Well, it depends who you're singing with. Some people are more forgiving than others. Certain drums are more forgiving than others, and and a lot of the very popular drum groups, they do sing with a very high voice, and that. But Morning Thunder's a little more forgiving. It's there's a much greater variety of what's acceptable when you're singing and for leads. And I know I also sing with the Loons Travelers out of Keweenaw Bay. And they sing a lot of what they call old songs. I mean, old Anishinaabe songs. And they tend to be a little bit softer, a little bit lower. They don't get into that high vocalizations and stuff. They're much more low key. And those are a lot easier and kind of fun to sing too, because they don't stress your throat out. But when we're talking about leads, is in a drum song, normally you have a lead which leads in to the song. And that lead is sung by one person, and he sets up the song. And then after the lead is done, that's when everybody comes in and sings. And then you go through different push-ups, and normally you do 4 to 7 push-ups. It can be more or less than that, but a 4 tends to be a nice Anishinaabe number. 7's a nice Anishinaabe number. So normally it's somewhere between 4 and 7, but it can fluctuate. And the push-up is like a round. And at the end of every round, you do another lead to begin that next round. And so I mentioned before, I don't always remember the words, and that's because sometimes there's Anishinaabe words in there, sometimes there's English words, sometimes they're mixed, sometimes there's vocalizations, which aren't words, but are vocalizations that have been passed down over generations and generations. So they have meanings, even though they're not here, a meaning that goes with it. And some songs got all 3 of them mixed, vocalizations, Anishinaabe, and also English. And but they're fun. I mean, drum can be very serious, very ceremonial, and lots of times it can be very fun too, and a lot of fun. I know one of my favorite drum experiences. I was down in Waters Meet. And we were down there at a powwow and at Loch Be Desert, and there was a young group of singers, that came over, and I don't know if they were from Lac du Flambeau or Bad River, but they're over from Wisconsin somewhere, and they're a young group of singers, just kids, in their early teens, not even late teens, early teens or preteens. And they were singing, and they were having so much fun. And they were singing the Old MacDonald song, where they took Old MacDonald and added it to the drum, but they did it better than anybody else I've ever seen do it. And they were laughing as they were doing it, and it was such a happy moment. It was one of my best drum experiences ever, watching those young men, young boys sing that song and have so much fun with it.
And so with the songs themselves, do they usually have a meaning or a story behind it, or some are just made up? How does that work?
Well, I mean, some people are still writing songs, and they own those songs because they write them. I know, there's many groups that do that, and they own the songs, and you're not supposed to sing their songs unless you get permission. And you shouldn't sing their songs, especially if they're there, because that's their song to sing. So, I mean, there are songs that are being written, but then there's other ones that are passed down, and like I said, for generations, that get passed from drum to drum to tribe, that different people, sing, like our flag songs and our opening ceremony songs, and like the last song, A Wounded Knee, our traveling songs. Those are songs that most drum groups know and they play. And if they're asked to do them at a ceremony or at a powwow or whatever, they have those songs to draw on. And each drum group, some of them sound very similar, but then some drum groups do them just a little bit different. They might add their own little touch to it, but they all do have their own meaning, whether it's the words or the vocalizations. There's normally you normally hear the origin of that song, where it came from, and what it means. Like I was telling during our podcast or our Zoom meeting that we had last week, I told a story about Yakaway, which is about the eagle. And when you hear the song Yakaway, it's a very simple song, but when you hear me tell the story about it, it's a really deep song with a lot of visualizations and everything else. But Yakaway itself is mostly vocalizations. But that story comes from that song. So that's part of the thing with the drum and the songs is there's a meaning and a story that goes with it. And normally there's certain key words or key vocalizations in there that bring home that meaning or that story of what that song is about.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I if no one's ever listened to a drum before, it's a very powerful experience, especially if there are multiple people drumming at the same time. If there's like 5, 6, 7 people, it's just you feel it in your body, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that drum, I mean, it's big. It's big, so you're right. You feel it. You feel it in your chest, just like a heartbeat. You can feel it. And for a lot of us, we're drawn to it. I mean, you hear it and you go to it when you hear it. And when your kids are young, you bring them to the drum and they're loud. But I mean, you'll see that the people standing around the drum with babies, and the babies are sleeping. To them it might be loud, but they're sleeping because even though it's loud and it's powerful, it's that reminder of that heartbeat of Mother Earth. So it's a loud and powerful sound, and that's the big drum. When we sit around, you see the big drum. There's also water drums, which are a little bit smaller and more ceremonial, and then there's a hand drum. And I'm not a hand drummer myself, but boy, I love listening to some hand drum. There's some good singers, some good writers that sing although some of them got some old songs that get passed along too. More and more, a little bit with the hand drum, a little bit more modern, and people like to write their own songs. And like with a lot of things, kind of like with the flute, sometimes called the love flute. Sometimes the hand drum, I notice a lot of the hand drum songs talk about romance or love too. Trying to get a girl or girl dumping them or something, it's so, but the voices, I mean, people that do the hand drum really try to use their voice too, and the good hand drum singers got great voices, whether they're singing by themselves, and now more and more you're seeing duets or even quartets of people singing hand drum songs with the hand drum, and so I really enjoy listening to them. And I don't think I mean, I have some hand drums, but I normally use them for marches and protests. I don't and doing my own prayers and things like that. But I don't think I'm able to be a hand drum singer
Yeah.
myself.
And something I just want to add, when you were talking about the grandfather drum being the heartbeat of Mother Earth, I'm learning a little bit as I go along, Anishinaabe one. And I was taught by someone in Canada, I can't remember his name right now, but he taught me that the word for drum is Odewagan. But
No, go ahead.
he was telling me that it was Odewagan, and when you break that down, when you say it, it represents a heartbeat, like Ode Wagan, because Ode is heart, and so it means the heartbeat of Mother Earth. So Ode Wagan.
Yeah, we have different dialects in Anishinaabe, whether it's the Ottawa, whether it's the Eastern Chippewa or Western Chippewa, or the Potawatomi. And so some of the words are similar, but there are a little bit of variations from it. But like the Waban is normally what we use on the western end. But I understand that coming, especially from Canada or like Manitoula Island and that, where it's much more, Ottawa Anishinaabe than Ojibwa, Anishinaabe and that. So, but I know a little bit of Anishinaabe, and like I said, I pick it up with the different ceremonies and drum songs and different things I'm learning. And I'm always trying to learn different things because I tell stories and I like to add, different Anishinaabe words in my story. I don't know if I'll live long enough to ever be fluent enough to tell a whole story in Anishinaabe. But one thing I learned is that words have so much more meaning in Anishinaabe than it does in English. They normally go a lot deeper. Like you said, the words have meaning. I mean, they represent different things. Where I think the English language, although you can get very colorful and poetic with it and things like that, the words themselves seem pretty plain and clean cut. Where in Anishinaabe, and there's normally a lot more meaning to the word and where the word comes from.
Definitely.
Yeah, English, they come from Latin and German and all those different influences that influence the creation of the English language over the many centuries. Where Anishinaabe has its own origin.
Mm-hmm. We've had thousands and thousands of years to establish meaning to our words. We didn't just take it from a bunch of other places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I always encourage people, if they have an opportunity to hear a drum group, go to a powwow, an open powwow, or any ceremony that's open to the public, and there are hand drums or water drums or grandfather drums, I always encourage them to go, because it's scary for people, especially if you don't know the etiquette. But just be able to experience that culture, that's a really important and powerful part of the culture that not many people get to see, right?
Right. And I mean, there's so many people, I do the same thing, I promote it. And most people that aren't Anishinaabe is they think it's not open to the public. They think they're not going to be welcome. They feel like, and I don't notice that. All the powwows I've been to, the many, many, many years, I've never seen anybody that has been made to feel unwelcome. Lots of times, that at almost all the powwows, they're explaining what the songs are, what the dances are, so that people that may be coming to a powwow for the first time or may not come to powwows very often are actually learning why people are, dancing a certain way or wearing certain regalia or what a certain song might be for, so it's very educational. For people that go to powwows all the time, it's kind of like a community or a community or family gathering where you feel very comfortable. But for people that don't go in them all the time, it can be something that's very educational. And I've talked several people into going to powwows that never went to before. And of all the people I tell to come to powwows, they always come back. They go to more because they really enjoyed it. They enjoyed the singing. They enjoyed the dancing. They enjoyed the education they got. And powwows are more than just the song and dance too. It's also the crafts and the food that comes there. It's like our own like I said, our own community picnic, our own kind of little fair, you know, cultural fair that we have at powwow. So and I don't know if I've ever seen a powwow that says not open to the public.
Yeah, I don't think I
More and
have
more,
either.
yeah, more and more of them are going back to being more traditional, where you don't charge a mission fee or anything like that. It's just open and a celebration of our culture. But sometimes, you know, you do go to some powwows where they do charge you to come in, and that's to help defray some of the costs, because it costs money to put on a powwow, like you putting on any event.
Hmm. Yeah, and unfortunately, I've been hearing a lot of, due to the whole Corona, a lot of the powwows this season are starting to be canceled. I know the gathering of the Potawatomi Nation down in Hannahville, that was recently canceled. So I'm not sure how many are going to be going on this summer.
Right.
But
And that was an earlier one. And you know, the earlier ones definitely are getting canceled. Of course, our winter ones, our late winter ones in March. We were able to do our powwows in January, but like our March powwows have been canceled. And I expect I'm going to guess that I go to a veterans powwow in Kashina, the gathering of veterans over in Kashina at the Menominee Nation in May. And I haven't heard anything about it, but I'm guessing it is canceled. It's you know, it normally goes on the second weekend in May, so I need to check to see if it's actually going to happen. But I got a feeling it won't. I think you might. I'm hoping that you will see some powwows that are happening maybe later in July, and August will still happen. Of course, all of us that are on Facebook, you know, we've been seeing the social distancing powwows online, where people are posting pictures of them dancing or singing or just in their regalia, which is kind of nice too. But and hey, we're living in an age where you can go to YouTube and you can search up just about any drum song or that you want to hear, if you want to hear a song. Naturally, it's not the same as being there, but it gives you a little bit of fix. I was just talking to somebody, I think earlier today, where I'm saying, you know, this coronavirus thing, we're so blessed right now in our journey that we have Facebook. We got podcasts and Zoom meetings where you can actually talk and see somebody. When I was, and you know, even our people that are getting deployed, nobody wants to be deployed, but still they got their cell phones and they're able to FaceTime and talk back and forth with their loved ones back home. When I was overseas back in the 70s, we wrote handwritten letters that took, you know, 2 weeks to get there. And if you wanted to make a phone call, you were allowed to call for like 5 or 10 minutes. It cost you half your paycheck, it seemed like, and you had to go to a special building to do that phone call, to call home. So I mean, things are a lot better now than what they have done when we come into situations like this, where even if we don't get as many powwows in the summer, you know, hopefully we'll still get some, and we can still use our computer to get that cultural fix.
Yeah, and anyone who is going to be watching this, I highly recommend going on Facebook and looking up the social distancing powwow. You get a whole lot of taste of Anishinaabe dancers, some Sioux dancers, any dancers across the nation, right? And
absolutely. And I mean, there are differences. There are differences in the music. There's differences in the regalia, depending whether it's from the Southwest, from the South, from the Northeast, the Woodland, or over in the Plains Indians. There's been a lot of cross back and forth. There's been a lot of cross of regalia. People in our area are wearing certain regalia that was worn, you know, with the Plains Indians that they didn't wear before. Other ones are much more traditional, you know, with the beaver and the porcupine and those type of things being part of the regalia with a few feathers, where the Plains Indian were much more into mostly feathers and things like that. So each area has their own type of traditional regalia, and then there's kind of like a merging of regalia and culture between the different nations, you know, across Turtle Island, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing as long as you always remember your origins and always remember what's yours. But it's okay to blend and borrow from our brothers and sisters and other nations too. And I don't want to well, I don't want to get political or anything like this, but I think back to if we were blending a lot more 300 years ago, 400 years ago, we may have not had as much colonization as we had. And I can't say
I've been thinking about
too
that.
much because I can't say too much because I'm a product of colonization too. I mean, there's a part of me that came from people that came from Canada. So I don't want to say too much there, but
yeah, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, most of us are that product of colonization. I'm thankful for it. I love living in the 21st century with all the technology that we have. So it would be nice living in the bush and living fully traditionally, but I gotta enjoy some of the things that the colonialists have made.
Yeah, I don't, the good old days. There was a lot of not so good in the good old days too, and especially if you go back. In our culture, if you go back, if you go back before colonization, it might have been a much simpler life. But you're right. There's a lot of things that we wouldn't have now. But if you go back just 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 75 years, things were tough for Anishinaabes. Very tough. They were discriminated against. They weren't allowed to do their ceremonies openly. In a lot of places, you weren't allowed to vote. You weren't allowed to go into, use certain stores and things like that. So, it was not easy being Indian back in the good old days. What some people might consider the good old days. It's gotten a lot better since the late 70s, and we're not out of the woods yet. We see discrimination every day. It's sad. We see the aftermath of discrimination, and the thing is most people, when they discriminate or when they're doing something that's harmful, they don't realize they're doing it. It's just unconscious bias because our main culture, our main colonial culture, American culture, has been writing history books and writing the way things are done for decades and decades. And so everybody kind of accepts that's the way it is, and they don't realize the impact it has on other people.
Yeah.
And so it's slowly changing. The mascot thing is one of them. Some people don't see the problem with the mascot, but if it's not a problem with the mascot, then why is it such a problem to change it? If it's not a big deal, then if it's not a big deal, then change it. That's what I tell people is.
Yeah, and I learned this a couple of months ago, and I never even realized, but Prohibition ended for Native Americans a lot later than it did for all the other populations. And the Prohibition for Native Americans, it was illegal for us to own or drink alcohol until 1953. That was something that I learned the other day, and that just blew my mind. It's all this racist activity. It's a lot more recent in our history than people think it was.
Oh, exactly. In our government, racism still goes on, and there's pockets of it around the country, and it's racism against the American Indians, racist against anybody other than what you look like. It goes on still today. But you're right, it was in our government up until the 60s. Utah was the last state, to allow American Indians to vote in the state of Utah. And that was in I think it might have been 64 or somewhere in the 60s, when that was the last state to actually allow American Indians to vote. So, you're not even allowed to vote, not that long ago, 45, 50 years ago, is when you're given the right to vote. Mm-hmm. So when people say, hey, just be American, you don't need to be American Indian, just be American, just get on board with everybody else. We weren't allowed to get on board for a long time.
And it's super important to keep in touch with your culture because it makes you feel more at home in your own skeleton and be able to practice our own culture, whether it be flute making or playing the grandfather drum, or even just practicing your own ceremonial responsibilities as an Anishinaabe. It's super important to be in contact with our culture and to stay in contact and educate more people.
Oh, exactly. It's very healing. It's good for your soul. and we got a great culture. I tell everybody, if you're Irish American, German American, Russian American, whatever you might be, celebrate your culture. Your culture is wonderful, and it's got great history and great things with it too. But we as Anishinaabe, we got a great culture. I mean, our culture is tied. It's tied to everything around us, Mother Earth, and our brothers and sisters of the wing and the fin and of the forelegs. I mean, we're tied into that, and our culture is that. And I can't think of anything in our culture that is mean or against anybody else or another people. Everything is open and free and giving. I can remember, when I was learning more about our spirituality, and again, like I said, I'm also part French Canadian, and so my great grandfather came over from France, or from French Canada, and he was Catholic, and so he kind of raised the family Catholic, and got a relationship a little bit with the whole Bishop Berga history thing. My great grandfather helped build his first church on Madeline Island, and that. So I mean, there is some history there. And I was raised Catholic, left the Catholic school, I think, when I was in 4th grade. My mother finally had enough. She says, "I'm tired of them telling me to cut my boy's hair." She wouldn't cut our hair. And so finally, when I reached 4th grade, and I had a brother younger than me and brothers older than me, she finally pulled us out of school and put us back into public school. But they used to tell her to cut her hair, and she used to always tell them, "Show me one picture of Jesus, God, or any of the apostles on here that got longer or shorter hair than my sons, and I'll cut it." And they all had longer hair in the pictures than we had, so that normally kind of kept them grumbling for a little bit. But like I said, she got tired of fighting about our hair, and so we got pulled out of there. And I don't, and that was just a Catholic school. It wasn't a boarding school. I went home every night, So I mean, but some of the things that happened just in that daytime, I can only imagine what it'd be like in a boarding school, and I hear about it. But I've seen things happen just in that day school that made me think, holy smokes, where they only got these kids for 7-8 hours a day. If they had them all day long without their parents knowing what's going on, I could only imagine what could happen in those schools.
Yeah. The boarding schools are and not a lot of people know about them, and we've been teaching about it internally. But I really want to do another video on explaining what really the boarding schools were. It's a really heavy-hearted topic, but it's one that people need to know about.
That new movie that came out, Indian Horse, is a great movie, but it's hard on your heart. I mean, it's a well done movie. It's a great movie, but it's not going to make you feel good. It's definitely not going to make you feel good.
So watch a nice movie afterwards. A nice, powerful romance. Yeah. And so the next thing I want to talk to you about is, you said you were part of the Wigwada and Ogitchada Society. Talk a little bit about that. What that means, first of all.
Well, the Wigwadong Ogitchada Society. Wigwadong is the Anishinaabe name, or the Keweenaw Indian name for that area that they live in. It means the area of the bay or Bay Area. And so Wigwadong is just the geographic name from where we are, and Ogitchada is the name for warrior. And so when I first joined the group, I can remember we were doing the Vietnam Moving Wall in Marquette, and I was with the Patriot Guard Riders, a motorcycle group that honor veterans, and I was coordinating with Matt Chalafoy, who was the commander of the Keweenaw Bay Veterans Group. And when I met with him, talking about what we could do for each other, he says, "Well, you ought to join our group." And I says, "Well, I mean, I live about, it doesn't matter, you live about an hour away, come join our group." So he invited me into the group, and I, like I said, that must have been 10 years ago or so. And I got involved with the group. And at the time, they did a lot of color guards at their powwow and at Lockview Desere's powwow, and any events they might have in their own community. And that's pretty much what they did. They had a core group of individuals, probably 10, 11, 12 individuals that were part of it. They had uniforms, that they wore during those ceremonies and different things. But it was a bunch of guys that were Marines, Coast Guard, Air Force, Army, Navy, all military veterans that got along. And then after being with the group for a couple of years, we decided to kind of change our bylaws a little bit. And when we changed the bylaws, because they were old, we wanted to put more culture into it. We wanted to put more of our Anishinaabe culture into it. And so we changed the name from Keweenaw Indian Community Veterans to the Weekwadong Ogichida Society, which seemed like a much more appropriate name. And along with that, we started to, and I've seen it change also. There's veteran groups all around Michigan, Indian veteran groups all around Michigan. But I've seen a change happening too. Gun Lake it plays a very important role, but there's other veteran groups there too that are bringing more responsibility, cultural responsibility to those veteran groups, and not just being a veterans group carrying flags, but also having other cultural responsibilities during ceremonies and different things that you might be there representing. So there's been a lot more teachings and a lot more things that have been going on. And unfortunately, not every tribe has a veteran group. Veterans are honored and respected in our native culture, but like has been happening in our broader culture, organizations and groups are getting smaller and smaller, and people are participating less and less. And there's some tribes that ask us to come do their color guards because they don't have a veteran group and they don't have a veteran color guard for their own tribe. So that, in a way, that's a little bit sad. I'd like to see that change to where more and more tribes are helping stand up their veteran groups so they can provide their own color guards, because it's in our culture to honor our veterans. And American Indians have been serving at a greater propensity than any other group out there, any other demographic out there, and we got a history of it. Even though we weren't always considered to be American citizens, we were still serving. And some people say, how can you serve a country that that did so much against you? Well, because it's still our country. We're still here. And even though we have our own sovereign nations, we're also part of this bigger nation, and that's part of who we are too. And that's why we serve. We don't want to give everything away. We don't want to let everything be in their hands. We want to make sure we're there too with them and playing a role, keeping an eye on everything, and doing our part, protecting our land, protecting our culture. So that's what I tell people. That's why serving was easy for me, is it wasn't about serving somebody that was a conqueror, because they didn't conquer us. We still have our sovereign nations. We signed our treaties, even though they've been broken so many times. They're still there, and we're still sovereign nations, so we haven't been conquered. We're our own nation within a nation, and to serve them both is an easy way for me to have peace with it.
And so you talked a little bit about it, but being Anishinaabe, what are your responsibilities culturally for being an Ogichida?
Well, being an Ogichida, a veteran, and some tribes and in some cultures, they consider Ogichida not just veterans. They're people that serve their tribe, their community. Whether they're policemen, firemen, whatever they might be. So Ogichida in some communities, some tribes, is even broader yet. But for our veteran Ogichida, our responsibilities are not only carrying in the flags. Lots of times we'll be the ones asked to carry in the Eagle staff, our tribal staffs. But we also have a responsibility during certain ceremonies or certain dances, honor dances in the powwow circle, the powwow arena, is to close off, guard the four doors, the four direction doors, to ensure that people aren't running in and disrupting the honor dance or the ceremony that might be going on. We're also, if an eagle feather drops, it's the veterans, the Ogichida, that are responsible for picking it up in a proper and respectful way, and doing the different things. Different tribes have different ceremonies or different songs they might do during it, but there is a proper way of picking up that eagle feather, and it should be a gitchada that does it, because that eagle feather is considered to, in many cases, to be a fallen soldier, and so you want another soldier or a veteran to pick up that soldier when it is time to pick it up. And so those are some of the other responsibilities that we have. And again, different tribes again ask the veterans to do different things. We try to do more than just, we try to do things throughout the year too. We try to help put different veteran or different things on, support the tribe in different ways when asked to, just like other veteran organizations might do, is we want to, even though we have already served, we want to continue to serve. And I think that's what a lot of veterans feel, is even though you volunteered once, you did your time, now you're not anymore, you still have that in your blood to where you want to serve. You already raised your hand and stepped forward and served once already. And not everybody's case, but most people's case, there was a lot of positive to that. And just like in giving, we all feel good when we give. It's nice to receive, but we all feel good when we give. And so serving is a way of giving. And so there's different things we'll also do in the community, whether we're asked or whether we volunteered to do.
Yeah, and if anyone ever, again, does go to a powwow, the veteran presence is always known. You see veterans walking all the way around, which makes me really happy to see all of that. And the veterans just engaging with all the people at the powwow. They're probably some of the most friendly people whenever you go there.
They're all friendly. They're all friendly. But I talked about a little bit earlier about the great propensity to serve in the American Indian community. I went up to the pipeline up there at Standing Rock, and we were going up to deliver supplies. We asked people to donate things because winter was coming, and I loaded up my pickup truck, and I looked like I had a couple people in the cab of the truck with me, and the back of my cab was so high with bags of clothes and boots and blankets, and we had it all tied down. I mean, it looked like a small spider with a big egg sack on it. I don't know if you remember the Beverly Hillbillies, where they packed up their whole household and put it on the back of the truck. That's what it kind of looked like. And we drove out to Standing Rock, and it just happened to be the same weekend that they were calling veterans to come in and support the protest there, support the movement. And they were hoping to get 3,000 people to show up. And we got there, and that day, before the storm blew in, this was the day before the storm blew in, there was probably 12 to 13,000 veterans that showed up. They were talking about paying people to fly in, and they had arranged for a couple thousand people to help get reimbursed. But there was another 10,000 people that showed up, weren't looking for any reimbursement. They just heard the call, and they were coming to support. They were coming to support a movement about a sovereign nation standing up for their rights, and they just came on their own. And it was so impressive to see all those veterans there in camp, and to be there in support. And it was, like I said, they were hoping they'd get a couple thousand, and they got 10 more thousand than they were hoping to get. So there's a lot of veterans out there. Those that can serve normally do serve. Not everybody can serve. It's not easy to get into the military. Some people think that it's easy to get into the military, but it's actually not that easy. I mean, you got to qualify in several different ways to be able to get in. So besides having the desire to get in, you also got to qualify to get in too. But it's good to see so many American Indians that do qualify and do serve. It says a lot about our people, about our culture.
Yeah. Again, thank you for your time in the service and still continuing to help out communities. That means a lot. It means a lot to a young guy like me who I can volunteer a little bit more with my time.
Well, we all take different paths. We all take different paths, and they're all important. Not everybody can be on the same paths. So I don't ever think different of anybody that hasn't served. Because I used to be a recruiter for a time while I was in the military. And the hardest thing about being a recruiter for me was not trying to find people to join. The hardest part for me was telling the person that wanted to join but couldn't, because maybe they didn't have a high enough score. maybe they had a health issue that prevented them from getting in, or maybe they had some law violations that just, they couldn't get in with. And a lot of those people really wanted to join, but they couldn't, and the door was closed to them. And that was the hardest part with me, was telling the people that couldn't join, that wanted to join, rather than trying to find people that wanted to join. But I always told them too, hey, you're just got a different path. You want to join, you want to serve, you can still serve. It just may not be in this uniform. Maybe you can still be a policeman or a fireman. Maybe you can be a paramedic. Maybe you can be a teacher. All those people and more. I mean, you take a look at even today during this pandemic, where, I mean, my heart just beams when I go into a grocery store and I see those grocery stores still working. When I see the package people still delivering packages, all those people that are still out there working so we can have still somewhat of a normal life. And, to me, those people are serving us right now, and they always have been. We look at them now more like they're serving us, but every day they serve us. We all serve each other. So there's different ways of serving, and so I never think, even though veterans are honored in our culture, we need to honor all our people. All our people are doing something for each of us. So
yeah.
It's
in Native culture, and I can only speak for Anishinaabe, but we're very community oriented. Everyone has their part to play, and everyone does their part in the community. So it's not just focusing on one person or one type of people. It takes an entire village to grow a child. So everyone plays their parts, and not all are the glorious jobs, but all jobs are needed for it all to work as a unit, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You definitely, you're right. We're a community, we're probably more community focused than a lot of other communities. But you're right. Everybody has a job. I love the way a lot of these tribes will help employ or keep busy some of the youth, especially during the summertime, by giving them jobs like cutting firewood for the campgrounds, or doing different things for the elders. It just makes me feel good that these tribes are getting our youth already involved in doing something for the community. And I see it outside of our Anishinaabe community too. I see more and more of our communities, our schools, our football coaches, that are saying that it's not just about football. It's about being a better human. And they have their football team going out and doing different things for the community, trying to teach them that life is not just about football. Life is about giving to others and doing things for others. So that's good to see too. And I think we gain that. We rub off on different cultures, and we might get some things from cultures too. But we do have good to share with everybody. We can learn from different cultures, just like other cultures are learning from us and could learn more from us. Right now during this pandemic, about how our Mother Earth is healing. And by the way, Happy Earth Day. There's Happy Earth Day. I think it's Earth Day every day, but Happy Earth Day, I'll celebrate the one day a year too that everybody officially celebrates. But right now we're healing, with all this less travel and all this less industry that's going on right now, and people not moving around. You can see the photos from space of how much cleaner our air is, how much cleaner our water is. And Mother Earth is getting a breather. She's starting to heal. And my prayers are that, hey, let's learn from this. And when we're over this, let's continue to do things maybe a little bit less than we did before, to give a break on Mother Earth. So there's some good things happening right now, as long as we can learn from them and learn the lessons of what we can do, to help Mother Earth a little bit more as she helps us so much.
Wise man, or wise word said by a wise man. Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about right now? Anything that's been on your mind?
There's stuff that floats in and out of my mind all the time.
I mean, we can do this again sometime. Talk a little bit more in depth about something else.
Well, I enjoy talking, and that. Matter of fact, just before I came on here, I wrote a story of an old sergeant of mine I worked with back over in Germany along the East and West German border when we served there. He's doing a little book of stories of our regiment when it served on the border, and he asked for some contributions. So I wrote him a little bit of story, and he asked me to give him a call. And we started to talk, and we've been talking for almost an hour, but talking about that time we served over there. So I mean, it's easy to get me talking. So you got to be careful when you invite me to start talking, because who knows how long it's going to last.
It's a good thing my supervisor didn't give me a strict time limit with this. Yeah, we had all the time in the world. But yeah, I just want to say Miigwech for doing this. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day just to have a little bit of a chat with me.
Chi Miigwech to you too, and I got to say Chi Miigwech to all the people that have helped me on my path. Like I said, I wasn't on much of a path. I mean, I was on a path, but it was a different path when I served in the military. But when I retired and returned home here, to the shores of Gitche Gumi, I sought out some help, and I got a lot of help from some people that were already into the culture, some people that were always into the culture. And those people helped me, people from Red Cliff and people from Keweenaw Bay, people from Sault Ste. Marie, all the different people from Lac Vieux Desert. I got a lot of help from a lot of different people, helping put me on the path and reconnect me with my culture. And so I got to give a thank to all of them because my life and me as a human is so much better than probably what it was. I'm not saying I was a bad person before, but there's a lot of rewards in reconnecting with your culture and your ancestors. So it's just a very comforting feeling.
Yeah, there's no feeling like it.
So with that, if there's nothing else, I think I'm going to go cook some supper for my family.
All right. Well, you have a good day. Thanks for doing this. And yeah, I'll keep in contact with you.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
All right. Bama.
Miigwech. Bama P.